I've been playing video games my entire life. My first game system I ever owned was an Atomic Purple Game Boy Color, where I wandered aimlessly playing The Legend of Zelda: Oracle of Ages. As much as I like the Game Boy Color, and I'm thankful for it to getting me into games, the Game Boy Advance is really where I started to get games. Got the GBA right around when I learned to read, and I fell in love with that weird little purple football thing instantly. This is where I first fell in love with Pokemon, and when I actually started beating Zelda games. To this day, I still have all my old GBA games that my mom wrote my first name on in Sharpie on the back. You know, in case another child moved into my house and started claiming those games as their own. Today I want to talk about the games from the Game Boy Advance that are now available to play on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. These games released alongside the Game Boy games back in February, and I already made a video going over those games, but I've been really excited to get to the GBA ones. Originally releasing with 6 games, a 7th game in Metroid Fusion has come to the service since release, and today I want to give a mini review for each of those 7 games and whether or not I think they hold up today. This video will not really be about if NSO expansion pack is worth the money or not, rather just to look at the games that are on the service themselves and how enjoyable they are to play. First up, a favorite of mine.
Nintendo!
The game I want to talk about first is one of my favorite games, not just on the GBA, but of all time. I distinctly remember getting Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga for Christmas one year, and since then I have played through this game probably half a dozen times. Turn-based RPGs are my jam, and Mario is my boy, so this game was practically made for me. This game takes place in the neighboring Bean Bean Kingdom as Mario and Luigi go on a journey to save Princess Peach's magical voice from the evil Cackletta. Mario RPGs have a pretty wide range of quality and fan perceptions, but one thing that's been pretty consistent is the great comedic writing, and Superstar Saga is no different. Mario and Luigi don't talk, but they do emote and jibber-jabber in responses to the problems they're presented with, and in some instances, those moments make for funnier outcomes without even having to use words. The supporting characters all have their fun running jokes, the most prominent being the classic dunking on Luigi, and overall the dialogue is just a real enjoyable part of the game. Maybe I'm just nostalgic for some of it, but I really do think on a first playthrough you will get at least a few chuckles here and there. There are 2 main parts of the gameplay of Superstar Saga: the world exploration and puzzle solving part of the game, and the turn-based battle part of the game. I love me some turn-based RPGs, and this one is really well done in my opinion. You get to choose from a variety of move options, some simple and straightforward, some a little more complicated with the high damage bros attacks. In battle, you control Mario with the A button and Luigi with the B button, and your main goal is to time button inputs to the correct parts of the attack to get the most damage possible on your enemies. The best part of the battle system though is when you're on defense. This game is a very respectable variety of different enemies and bosses to go your way, all of which have their own unique attack animations and moves. And the cool part about this is in learning these enemy moves, you can dodge and or counterattack any move in the game. Playing this game for the 5th or 6th time, whatever it is for me, I felt like an absolute monster because I learned how to take advantage of pretty much every enemy, and it's so satisfying to come out completely untouched from pretty much every battle. The equipment and stat systems are pretty straightforward. You have your basic HP, attack, defense, speed, and so on. But my favorite stat is actually the stash stat, which increases your critical hit rate and makes for bigger discounts in the shops. You can increase these stats through just leveling up, and from the bonus stat reward you get to put into 1 stat per level. You also can get these stat boosters from brewing beans from around the kingdom into different coffees. And these little cutscenes you get here are very charming and just add to that much more life into the game. This game is practically brimming with references to old Mario games through the appearance of old enemies from all across the Mario catalog, fun visual Easter eggs, and some cool returning characters you wouldn't necessarily expect to see here. Exploring the world using all the different platforming and puzzle tools you unlock along the way is consistently a good time, but maybe gets a tad tedious towards the end of the game when you're constantly cycling between the abilities. puzzles are never overly difficult, but a good enough challenge often enough to make you feel smart. There are mini-games to play, items to collect, and beans to dig up around every corner. The Bean Bean Kingdom is a blast to run around in, and I hope we get to go back in a future game one day. One of the more underappreciated Nintendo series, in my opinion, is WarioWare. WarioWare Get It Together is one of my favorite games on the Switch, and I would argue I've probably played that game more than 99% of the people who bought it, since I did the weekly Gold Cup Challenge every Tuesday night for a year. If you're interested to see what that looks like, here's my shameless plug to go check out some of those videos on my channel. As much as I like Get It Together though, that was not my first introduction to the series. No, way back in the good old early 2000s, I remember borrowing and playing WarioWare Inc. Mega Microgames for the GBA and loving it. Sadly, I've never actually owned it, so I haven't played it in almost 2 decades, but Nintendo Switch Online has my back, now offering the original entry to the series to play on the Switch. If you don't know anything about WarioWare, it's basically a very goofy, strange series of fast-paced minigame challenges where you aim for high scores with a limited number of lives. A game will pop up on your screen with a very basic, sometimes one-word instruction, and it's up to your instincts and reaction time to accomplish the task put in front of you. These games can be so addicting to me because on that first run-through, the wild ideas that are set in front of you are so bizarre and funny it makes for a good laugh, and the later repeated attempts rely on your memorization of the solutions for you to go for those really satisfying high score runs. Later games in the series get a little more complicated with whatever console gimmicks are available, but I think the simplicity of a D-pad and a couple of buttons makes for a great focused experience that's easy to pick up on. This game is a great pick up and play and will only take you a couple hours to unlock all the mini-games and roll credits. It is a welcome addition to my Switch. When people name their favorite or the best Zelda games, you'll often hear people say Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, and really depending on who you ask, you can get a lot of different answers. That's one thing about the Zelda series that's so good, is that it's so consistently quality. I do feel like there's one entry though that often gets forgotten about, and that's Minish Cap. I don't know if it's because it's a Capcom developed game or because it came out the same month as Nintendo DS, but either way, I feel like Minish Cap deserves more flowers than it gets. Zelda games often have their gimmicks that set them apart from the other games in the series, Minish Caps being the ability to turn super teeny tiny and explore the world of the Picori, a race of tiny little creatures that are unknown to the average Hylian. But lucky for you, you are no ordinary Hylian. You are the green-cloaked hero, a promised reincarnation full of courage and bravery to defeat evil we all know and love. Sebastian. Minish Cap, for the most part, follows the standard 2D Zelda formula that involves exploring the overworld to get to a dungeon, get a cool new item, go back and explore that overworld with that new cool item, and rinse and repeat. But you know what? It's pretty damn solid at pulling that off. More so than other 2D Zelda games, I really feel like the carrot on the stick to go back to old areas with my new equipment to find secrets and heart pieces was well done in this game. There are some cool sword techniques you can learn, a few secret weapon upgrades to unlock, and lots of kinstone fusing to do. Kinstone fusing is a little side activity in this game where you find NPCs throughout the world with little question marks over their heads indicating that you can fuse kinstone pieces you find in chests, grass, or enemy drops throughout the world to make some change to the overworld. These changes can be as small as a new chest opening up to a giant beanstalk growing into the sky. It does get a tad repetitive for some of the rewards, but there are some neat things to uncover. Another side activity in this game has to do with trading mysterious shells you'll get throughout your journey for the chance to win figurines for any character, enemy, or boss you may have come across in the game. These figurines not only look neat, but are a fun list to check off if you're into that kind of thing, but they also have fun and often humorous descriptions of the characters in question. I found the dungeons in this game to be a little on the easier side compared to some other 2D Zelda experiences. I don't know if that's just because I've played the game before or if it's actually the case, but I rarely got stuck and felt for the most part it was pretty straightforward what to do next in each dungeon. The game as a whole felt this way to me, with maybe one exception about halfway through the game. And if you're listening to what people are saying and looking for opportunities to use your new items, you should make pretty consistent progress without a whole lot of pushback. Overall, The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap is another quality Zelda title any fan of the series should experience. Fun characters, a world full of charm, with some of the best music and visuals the Game Boy Advance has to offer. It does suffer a bit from what I call the two-button problem for old handheld Zelda games, where you spend a lot of time in and out of your inventory switching equipment out for the task at hand, but even so, it did not get in my way of enjoying this great game. When I made a video talking about the N64 offerings on Nintendo Switch Online, I talked about my lack of enjoyment going back to play Mario Kart 64. I feel like this series is an example of where the newest, best playing game will easily outshine its predecessors. Like, going back to play Super Mario World sounds a lot more fun than playing Super Mario Bros. U, but playing Mario Kart Super Circuit really does not sound enticing to me when I have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, that being said, in a vacuum, ignoring the better Mario Karts, did I like Super Circuit? Sadly, once again, not really. There are 20 tracks to experience in this game, 4 of which are Bowser's Castle 1 through 4, but they offer the expected variety of Mario environments. The problem for me isn't there, it's not even with the visuals, which I think were pretty good considering this is on a Game Boy Advance, but I really could not get a grip on the controls in this game. I'm so used to the drifting in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which feels so well balanced and great to control, that this game's turning and hopping mechanics never quite sat right with me. To be fair, I did not sit there and grind out time trials trying to improve my skills for hours, but I did play each track more than once, and even after those dozens of races, I never fully felt confident I could go in and win any race like I could in the modern Mario Karts. More often than not, I felt my best option for a sharp turn was just to slow down a little bit instead of going in with the, in my opinion, hard to control hop with the R button. And I was able to get through each cup on 150cc doing this after a few tries. This game is more playable than the original SNES release for me, but I can't imagine a circumstance where I go back and revisit this one again when they have all these other options. When asked what my favorite Mario game is, I'll give you a quick and easy Mario Odyssey. But when asked what my favorite 2D Mario game is, I have to sit and think for a little bit. This thinking normally leads me to either Super Mario World or Super Mario Bros. 3. World has the bigger, better world map and levels in my opinion, with all the fun secret exits and shortcuts, but Mario 3 always gets me with what I believe to be the more fun set of power-ups. This go-round of Mario 3 is a little bit different for me though, because it's not just Super Mario Bros. 3. No, this is Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, with the e-reader exclusive levels included, which I have never played. The e-reader may as well have been a myth when I was a kid, so despite owning this game, I never got a chance to play any of these levels. For this run, I decided just to go the speedrun route of the base game, basically using the 2 flutes to skip to World 8, and then I spent most of my time playing these new to me levels. And right off the bat, I gotta say these are some neat additions. First of all, you can play and replay them in any order as much as you want right from the start, which is great and a nice change from how Mario 3 normal works. These e-reader levels range from something as simple as classic levels with a facelift to allowing you to use mechanics from other games as new power-ups. Some notable examples being the cape from Mario World and the turnip pulling mechanics from Super Mario Bros. 2. Hey, did you know that Super Mario Bros. 2 was actually based off another game called Doki Doki? Most of these levels were enjoyable new additions to an already great game, with only a couple tedious ones standing out from the others. Namely, the ghost houses for me. I never really liked ghost house levels. I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion or not. Super Mario Advance 4 is a fantastic game, and this version in NSO includes great additions most of its fans have probably not experienced. Whether it be getting to play as Luigi and his different physics and insanely high jumps, or trying out the dozens of new levels once blocked behind an obscure peripheral, there are plenty of reasons to give this game a go. So yeah, when it comes to what my favorite 2D Mario game is, I gotta say, Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, with the included e-reader exclusive levels on the Nintendo Switch Online for the Nintendo Switch family of systems.
Choose a game. Mario Brothers.
Now I do want to quickly throw in a little bonus game and talk about the Mario Bros. Pack-In game that was included on pretty much all the Mario games back on the Game Boy Advance. On this service, playable on both Super Mario Advance 4 and on Superstar Saga. I remember playing a good amount of this game as a kid and had a good time goofing around with it now. This is a high-score, level-based game where you're just running around flipping over enemies by jumping onto the floor beneath them and then kicking them in the face. It's a pretty simple, easy to understand time waster on your own, but playing with friends, it's just that much more enjoyable as you get to run around as Mario and your friend gets to run around as Green Mario, and you can either work together or mess each other up. Both are fun options. I did not play a whole lot of this game this time around, but it's always fun to play growing up and it seems to hold up pretty well today. And if you got a few friends with the expansion pack, give it a go with some multiplayer, you'll have a blast. Prior to making this video, I had played each game on this service at least to some extent in the past, all except for KuruKuru Kururin. KuruKuru is essentially a puzzle game where you navigate through maze-like levels with your spinning line thing that's apparently the top of a helicopter. These mazes are all top-down and require quick thinking, good timing, and if you want to beat the game, a determined player to get through them all. Now, right off the bat, I had a really good time at this one, which was a pleasant surprise. I did not even know what this game was until recently, and then Nintendo chooses to headline its new GBA selection with it, so I was pretty excited to give it a go. The first few worlds of this game are nothing too crazy. As long as you pay attention to what's ahead and take your time, you should be golden, being able to work your way through with some ease. But the later parts of this game were extremely challenging for me. So much so, I'm fairly certain without the use of save states, I would not be able to get through them. Basically, in each level you have 3 hearts, and each time you touch something, you lose a heart. You lose all the hearts, and you start that level over. There are no checkpoints per se, but you do get these little safe areas that refill your health throughout the levels. I used these as my checkpoints and made save states here most of the time. And despite its difficulty, I think this game is incredibly well designed. Backing in and out of alleyways as you spin around, hitting springs to change your direction, and boosting through narrow passageways before you get too wide was very fun to overcome. There was this sweet spot in the game where I felt like it pushed back against me just enough to make me feel smart and good at video games, but yeah, once I got to the end, it was way too hard for me. You can play on easy mode, which drastically reduces the size of the blade of your helicopter, but I chose instead to just save state my way through normal mode. Throughout the game, there are these little bird people you're supposed to save, and if you get all of them, you get the true ending of the game. There are also cosmetics hidden in the levels you can go out of your way to get if you want to mix up the look of your little spinny line. KuruKuru Kururin is a great, niche addition to this lineup of classics that I bet most people have not tried, but is well worth giving a go. last game on this list is also the most recent addition to the lineup, Metroid Fusion. Before the release of Metroid Dread back in 2021, Metroid Fusion was the furthest along the Metroid timeline, and originally it released back in 2002, a whole one day before Metroid Prime did, which to this day is just so silly to me. The games even had some compatibility with a GBA link cable, allowing you to use the Fusion suit in Metroid Prime, but sadly there is no such compatibility with this NSO version in the recently released remaster. This was my second time playing through Fusion. I originally sat down with it on the lead up to Metroid Dread, utilizing the Wii U Virtual Console, rest in peace, and even did a full review back then. My thoughts have not really changed a whole terrible lot since then. I still really do like this game, but it's not my favorite 2D Metroid. If I had to rank Fusion against the other 2D Metroids, assuming the best versions of those games with the remakes of 1 and 2, Fusion probably falls 4th out of the 5, with Samus Returns, or Metroid 2, being the only one I like less than Fusion. That being said, I still really do like Metroid Fusion. I think it's a great game. I just think it does a few things differently than I would like it to have done. Rather than taking place on the surface of planet Zebes or SR-388, Metroid Fusion takes place in the Biologic Space Laboratories research station. This station is segmented into different sectors with each unique biome and wildlife. My main complaint with Fusion is the one you probably always hear when people talk about this game, the linearity of it. And linear compared to other Metroids at least. You can still explore and find secret rooms and upgrades, but the funneling in this game is very apparent. Pretty much at all times you have your next waypoint marked on the map, and since the game is divided up into several smaller maps rather than one continuous interweaving spiderweb, that can make it feel much less like you're exploring and much more like you're just going to where the game tells you to go. Hey, there's a problem in this location in Sector 2, go check it out, doesn't always leave the most room for you to get lost and have to figure out the way forward. Linearity aside, Fusion is still a top-notch Game Boy Advance game though. The sprite work is great and the game controls even better. Fusion does a great job making you as the player learn how to use Samus' skills as you unlock them, new upgrades often being obtained in a room with only one specific way out, ensuring you know how to use your arsenal properly in order to progress. Like other games in the series, it's a blast to power up Samus in her suit, whether that's a new tool like the ice missiles or new platformer abilities allowing you to jump around the map in new interesting ways, and even allowing for some opportunities to explore previous areas to find an extra secret or two. Enemies and bosses are pretty diverse, making each sector of the station feel unique and helps keep the streamlined path at least feel fresh. I will say that I feel like some of the enemies, and especially some of the bosses in the back half of the game, really do pack a punch. In the case of a couple bosses, I would say almost unfairly so. These couple instances are annoying to me because I don't feel like the attacks coming at me are anything super complex or interesting. It's really just being trapped in a cramped room with a big ol' hurt box that takes a chunk of your health when you make contact. Overall, Fusion is a game I think is worth checking out, especially if you haven't had the chance to yet and maybe you enjoyed Metroid Dread. It's a pretty short game, so it shouldn't take you too much time to get through, especially if you utilize the save states to get you through some of the tougher areas. Looking back at the games in the service, it's hard not to just think about how good the Game Boy Advance was. There may be only 7 games in the service at the time of this recording, but they're almost all bangers. Sorry, Mario Kart. And the promise of other great games down the line makes it hard not to recommend people to check these out. I am really excited to get to play the other games from my childhood as well as some classics I did not get to play back then. Thanks for watching this video, and if you managed to stick with me to the very end, I want you to know that I really do appreciate it. I love making these NSO videos or reviewing games in general, so it really does mean a lot when people give me the time to listen to what I have to say. If you like this video, I do have a couple of similar ones for the N64 offerings on NSO and the Game Boy offerings as well as several other reviews of more modern game releases. Go check those out if that sounds like a good time to you. Anyhow, that's about all the time I got, so thanks again for watching. I gotta go play some Tears of the Kingdom.